Good day to each and everyone, especially to our beautiful instructor, Mom Kate and Mom Franz. I am Jericaril T. Basensi.
And I am Nara Grace, our editor, and we are tasked to talk about Indian literature and its prominent author with their famous literacies.
So first and foremost, what is Indian literature? Indian literature refers to the literature produced on the Indian subcontinent until 1947. The earliest work of Indian literature were all orally transmitted.
Sanskrit literature broadly comprises all literature in the Sanskrit language. These include texts composed in the earliest attested descendant of the Proto-Indo-Aryan language, known as Vedic Sanskrit, texts in classical Sanskrit as well as some mixed and non-standard forms of Sanskrit. The earliest attested Sanskrit text is the Rig Veda, a Hindu scripture from the mid to late 2nd millennium BCE.
Early Sanskrit literature. The first Indian literary work was a collection of Sanskrit hymns that was orally transmitted. The so-called Vedas, which were either sung or recited, are thought to have been composed as early as 1500 to 1200 BCE, but they were written down only at the end of the first millennium BCE, while the oldest Veda texts date to around 11th century.
Prominent literary works in Sanskrit, of course, also include the famous Ramayana and Mahabharata, epic poems, which are thought to have been created sometime between the 6th and 1st century BCE. The Ramayana is one of the great Hindu epics.
Classical Sanskrit literature. Despite the fact that India is home to many different languages, religious importance of the early Sanskrit text and the influence of Sanskrit of many Indian languages enabled Sanskrit literature to flourish over 1 millennium. Unfortunately, most Sanskrit works from the so-called classical Sanskrit literature have been lost. The most prominent surviving Sanskrit literary from the classical period include Abhid's Nana Sakuntalam by Kalidasa, Arthashastra and Nitishastra by Chanakya, Vasavadatta by Sobandhu and his son Skandagupta, Dashakumara Charita by Dandin, and Kama Sutra by Vatsyayana.
Medieval Indian literature. With the exemption of South India, where Tamil literature has been produced from the ancient times, medieval Indian literature remained strongly influenced by the Sanskrit literature. However, literary works that were created between the 11th and 19th century also reveal a major influence of Buddhist and Jain works. At the same time, Sanskrit gradually gave way to the Prakrit language, especially in Buddhist and Jain texts as well as other common Indian languages.
Modern Indian literature. The period of the modern Indian literature starts with the first movement for independence in the mid-19th century. The early modern Indian literature, however, was greatly influenced by both adoption of the Western thoughts and ideas on the one hand and the rejection on the other. Most famous Indian authors of the modern era include the Nobel laureates.
Rabindranath Tagore. Poet Rabindranath Tagore won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for his collection Gitanjali, published in London in 1912.
V.S. Naipaul, R.K. Narayan. Half a Life is a novel about an Indian immigrant to England and then Africa. He becomes a half person, as Naipaul has said, living a borrowed life.
Sarat Chandra Chattopadhyay was a Bengali novelist and short story writer of the early 20th century. Most of his work deal with the lifestyle, tragedy, and struggle of the village people in the contemporary social practice that prevailed in Bengal.
Salman Rushdie. Salman Rushdie is an Indian-born British-American novelist. His work often combines magic realism with historical fiction and primarily deals with connections, disruptions, and migrations between Eastern and Western civilization.
Mahadevi Varma. Mahadevi Varma was an Indian Hindi language poet, sketch, story writer, and an eminent personality of Hindi literature. Poet Nirala had once called her Saraswati in the vast temple of Hindi literature.
Arundhati Roy. Arundhati Roy is an Indian author best known for her novel The God of Small Things, which won the Booker Prize for Fiction in 1997.
Kiran Desai. Kiran Desai is an Indian author. Her novel, The Inheritance of Loss, won the 2006 Man Booker Prize and the National Book Critics Circle Fiction Award. In January 2015, the Economic Times listed her as one of 20 most influential global Indian women.
The highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes our lives in harmony with all existence, by Rabindranath Tagore.
Once again, I am Nara Grace, our editor.
And I am Jer Karilti Basensi. Thank you.